Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see you at our final English class of this short course. Quite a lot has been packed in. If you've been with us since the beginning, you will remember that from our first class until 27th March until now, we've explored the small and medium scopes of the Lam, as well as the very important topic of mind training with a variety of class leaders from our East and Southeast Asian region. And also, as you know by now, the focus of exploring and living in the path is on our holy guru, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and his precious teachings. Much has happened in this short time with Rinpoche as well. When this course first started, Rinpoche was at Kopan Monastery. And our first class leader, Venerable Drachom, who is normally based in Singapore, also happened to be in Kopan at the time. And so he delivered the class from there with our guru's blessings. Truly an auspicious beginning. Then fast forward a few months, and since our last class led by Jaya a month ago, Rinpoche has traveled to Singapore. He's had an operation in Singapore. He's recovered so well that he was discharged 2 days later, just in time to attend the puja for His Holiness's 87th birthday at Amitabha Buddhist Center, attended Guru Puja on 9th of July, and had a final checkup with his surgeon 3 days ago, who was very pleased with his healing progress. What a whirlwind, right? So through it all, we see Rinpoche's Bodhicitta attitude. It's emanating from every pore, permeating every action, infusing every interaction with all who are around him. So what more fitting topic to end this short course today? The Bodhicitta mindfulness it is. Our presenter today is Venerable Gyalmo, who is the resident teacher at FPMT Mongolia, and she has also been in Ulaanbaatar for the past 13 years. She offers service at the Mongolian High Security prison under the Liberation Prison Project as well. Venerable Gyalmo was a Hatha Yoga teacher in London when a student of hers first introduced her to FPMT. And she's now been actively involved with FPMT for 38 years, including 12 and a half years as the founding director of Hospice of Mother Tara, which is now known as Tara Meditation Center in Western Australia. She was ordained by Lama Zopa Rinpoche in 2009, and she has completed many FPMT education programs. Over to you, Venerable Gyalmo.
Thank you very much, Selena, and a very warm welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I feel like saying so many years being involved, but I still feel like I'm just putting on my training wheels. So I'm really happy to be here, especially to talk about our very precious guru, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who for myself, and I'm sure most of us who know Rinpoche, is Bodhicitta in action at all times, never ceasing. So I'd like to start with a short meditation. So if you would just make yourself comfortable, at least having your back upright, but not rigid. Partially closing your eyes if you're comfortable to do that. And just allowing your mind to come right to where your body is. Be present. And to help us to do that, we can take our attention to the crown of our head and take a minute just to scan down through the body, consciously releasing any held tension, any feelings of restlessness, just allowing them to dissolve away so that you can be in a position of stillness, physically to support the practice of meditation. And then allowing your body to breathe naturally. Place your attention at the opening of your nostrils. Just being aware of the air entering and leaving. Your attention being like a guard at the gate, not following the in-breath or following the out-breath, just being there to know the sensation, nothing else. When you're aware that your mind has wandered away to some other kind of distraction, just note distraction, let it go, and bring your attention back to the nostrils for a little longer. And then letting go of your focus on the air entering and leaving. Just taking a few moments to check your present motivation. Is it positive? Is it wholesome? Is it as you would like it to be? Not only for yourself, but for others. Just adjusting if need be before we take refuge and generate the mind of Bodhicitta. And then we'll go now to the slide of refuge in Bodhicitta. So we'll just say it a little slower so that we can really think about the meaning, letting the meaning come from our heart. We'll do 3 times in English. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then to the 4 immeasurable thoughts, which are the very basis, the very foundation for us to build empathy, compassion, and the supreme mind of Bodhicitta. Let's say this together 1 time. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from desire for friends and hatred for enemies. And then we can go to the next slide, please. So I thought just to start out a little about my journey, how I came to meet Lama Zopa and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. But just briefly, what I remember as a child, that I had many, many questions. And those questions I would address to the Christian minister, my mother being a Methodist and quite a very good person. But somehow nobody could answer my questions in the way that really satisfied my mind. So then I reached the age of about 18, 19, and I thought, because actually the minister used to tell me, well, when you are older, you will understand. So of course at 18 and 19, I thought, now I'm old enough, I should understand, and still I don't. So this actually led me to have a wish and to start saving money to travel, to go on a journey, which at that time I thought was just very much like, as we did as hippies in those days, back in the 70s, was to go and see the world and do any kind of work that came along. So I set off, I saved money, I set off, and actually before I set off, I actually married for the first time, and then away we went. So this extended for some 3.5 years of traveling. And at the time I thought it was very much an outer journey. But now, in hindsight, looking back, I realized it was much about an inner search as it was an outer. So it happened that I did Hatha Yoga training in London, and this came as a result of having a back injury as a young child and being told that I would always have pain. So I was able to overcome that through yoga, and then was offered the opportunity to train, which I thought was a good idea to perhaps be able to help others in a similar way. So in the course of my teaching Hatha Yoga, I had a lovely French student in one of my classes who I didn't know at the time, but turned out she was a devoted student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and also a sponsor of the cottage at Mindfulness Institute in Cumbria, many hours north of London, where the Lamas lived when they stayed at that particular center. So this was in 1977. So now I see it's already 45 years ago, which is making me feel quite aged. And I wonder where those 45 years have gone. So why did I go to Mindfulness Institute? Through this lovely lady. I was actually talking one night after a class, and I was having problems, as you do, with my first marriage. And so she said, why don't you just take a week out of London, ask for time off, and go to the monastery, Buddhist monastery, and spend some time in meditation. So it sounded like a good idea. And then she pointed me to a little advertisement on our yoga notice board that had the photo of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and I think it's the very first wisdom book. Some people, old students, you will know this book. This lovely photo. I had no idea what a Tibetan Lama was, but I thought it sounded like a very nice idea to go. So I did. And I had asked for 1 week off. And after a couple of days of attending Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings, I thought there's no way I can leave in 1 week. I need to stay. And the Lamas was staying for 5 weeks. So I contacted and got permission to stay from the yoga studio for the whole 5 weeks. So it was a whole new journey. You can say like my life just did a full 360 degree turnaround. And I finally was starting to hear, not that I understood so much, but starting to hear some answers that really grabbed my curiosity, and more than that, actually started to give me some logical explanations as to why we're here and what we're experiencing, etc. So that's how I went to Manjushri, and then I stayed on because it was making so much sense for me and I didn't want to miss out. And then on the 17th of July, which happens to be my anniversary today, I think it's very significant that somehow I was asked to do the presentation today. It's actually my 45th anniversary of refuge. So again, I still feel very much like a beginner, but I'm really rejoicing inside that I had this great good fortune through, of course, the lady in my class was the initial connection. So in those days, spending time with the lamas was like kind of easy compared to now. We all know the challenges to even be able to see Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or more to be able to have a personal interview. But somehow then there were not so many students, and I can remember having some sessions with Lama Zopa Rinpoche spanning over 2-3 hours, and then getting lovely little notes with drawings from Rinpoche saying, if you have any more questions, please ask. So Rinpoche knew exactly that I had all these questions. And then from the long personal consultations, I remember the very first drawing Rinpoche did for me actually while I was with Rinpoche was the hand mudras of the 35 Buddhas, the 5 rows. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, how will I ever remember that? So I referred to those little hand drawings many times over the years. And I think finally something's starting to stick. But those days, Rinpoche just, had, so much time, and I really value those precious gifts that he was able to give us. And of course, he's giving us continually, but in different ways. So then I also, at that time, I had no idea what it meant to be a nun or a monk, but I was really attracted to the robes. And so in one of my sessions with Rinpoche, I actually said, could I become a nun? And so Rinpoche said, well, yes, he said you could. But first you have to ask your parents for permission. So here I am, I've been away for 3.5 years. My parents come from a farm in Western Australia, and they had no idea that I'd even become a Buddhist. And I couldn't imagine being able to go home to them and say, well, actually, I'm a Buddhist now and I want to become a nun. So I thought, I will think about it. And the Rinpoche said, yes, do that. And don't forget the thought. So that was kind of, it set me on a journey, but then life came along as it does, and other things happened, and I ended up marrying for a second time and having 2 children. Well, first child was actually from first marriage, and second from the second, who actually was from Penang, Malaysia. So I have a very close connection with Asia, it seems, actually in this life. Spend more time in Asia than I do in Australia. Anyway, I just planted that seed in the back of my mind. I thought, well, one day, hopefully, I will be able to become a nun. Then many chapters, the hospice, I won't go into all of that, and starting a center. And this was all very precious and valuable life experience. Then the end of 2008, I was asked if I would like to work in Mongolia by the then center director. And so I thought, well, that sounds like a nice option. And up until then, whenever I wrote to Rinpoche, when there was like a major kind of life change or move, Rinpoche would always give me very clear instructions. So then this time I wrote thinking, Rinpoche will say yes or no. And instead Rinpoche said, you choose. And oh my gosh. So I had actually been to Mongolia in 2004 for EEC4. And I kind of fell in love with the land, with the culture, with the people. Not really thinking anymore about ever going to work there. Anyway, I didn't know quite how to choose, but in the span of about 3 or 4 weeks, 3 things came to me about Mongolia, not from Mongolia, but about Mongolia. No, and these people didn't know that I was actually had this dilemma in my mind, this decision to make. So on the strength of 3 things, I thought, okay, I will go. So I did. I landed in UB on New Year's Eve on 2008. And a few weeks after being there, I received a card from Rinpoche from Indonesia. I think Indonesia, Rinpoche was there giving commentary on Lama Zopa. And it said, many things, but the most important thing stuck out for me was that this year is a very good year for you to become ordained. So of course, 2, 3, 4 years ago, my husband and I had separated, and I had been living alone for quite some time. So everything seemed like the way was clear. And so I was going to the mining retreat in France, Bodhicitta, in I think it was April, May 2009, as well as the CPMT. And I was able to take ordination with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So a 30-year wish was fulfilled. And I'm extremely happy that that was able to happen. So maybe I will move on now, because it's always a long story, but it's the very best thing that's happened in my life. I cannot imagine how my life would have unfolded had I not met these two most precious gurus, of course, who have enabled me to meet many other gurus, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So let's move on now to the actual topic today, which fortunately Rinpoche is going to speak about mostly. I will just add a few bits and pieces here and there. But firstly, I don't know if there are any new people in the amongst the participants. I have no idea. I know there's quite some old students, and you will know all of this extremely well and maybe even better than I. But what is bodhicitta? So to start out with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, bodhicitta is such an incredible mind. So it's a Sanskrit word that means the mind of enlightenment or the awakening mind. Bodhi meaning awakened and chitta meaning mind. So what are we awakening from? We're awakening from all of the delusions, most especially the three root delusions of ignorance, of attachment, and of anger. We're clearing away all of the obscurations, all of the negative karmic imprints, and we're perfecting every good quality that exists. So it's a spontaneous and an altruistic mind seeking enlightenment. Why? So that we can lead all sentient beings out of suffering and bring them to a state of genuine, perfect, everlasting happiness, which when we check in with ourselves and with others, we all want happiness. Most have no idea, one, that it's attainable, and secondly, how to go about it. So then bodhicitta mindfulness, the actual topic of this presentation. So mindfulness is a very popular word, a practice in our world now. It's become extremely commercial. And of course, as a basis, it is something very helpful in our life. It provides a good foundation for us to be more present, to be more aware, to extract our experiences in a much richer way, to know those experiences. But just being mindful is not something so special. In fact, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, even the thief is an incredibly mindful person. He or she knows how to break into a house or into something without making too much noise and being extremely careful not to awake people if they're around or in their homes, etc. So this kind of mindfulness is, can be positive, can be negative, but not special. What makes mindfulness so special is actually bodhicitta. And this is really encouraging us to ask, why are we doing what we're doing and who are we doing it for? Most of us, before we meet Dharma, and probably even sometime after, who we're doing for usually is for oneself. However, with bodhicitta, as we become more familiar with it, as we become more familiar with the Dharma teachings, then we realize actually the purpose of our life is to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. So if we can have this motivation behind all of our actions day and night, then our life becomes steeped with what we can call bodhicitta mindfulness and is rich beyond imagination. So the training is, maybe in one way intellectually we can understand bodhicitta, but the training comes about in the daily practice of actually knowing what it is and then remembering to apply it at least at the motivational, in the motivational way. This is the most important way. If it's not in our mind, then maybe our activities are just ordinary, worldly, like we've been doing from beginningless time. So I think now let's go to the first video. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, bodhicitta brings happiness.
So, as it mentioned, the sutra teachings by Buddha, so that some of these mindfulness practices, of course, normally we can do it. That's incredible, but especially during retreat, I think when you do your personal retreat or the group retreat, these things you have a practice, that's extremely worthwhile. The mind to keep in the bodhicitta, Unless, of course, there's a renunciation, it's a right view. There's, I mean, you know, you can relate to many things. You can do activities of the different parts of Lamrim, but especially Bodhicitta. So everything, whatever activity you do with the Bodhicitta. So that's, you know, the wise. That's the most wise life, most meaningful, most beneficial life. So as His Dalai Lama often says, often says, that if you want to follow even maybe I put it this way, if one, as Dalai Lama said, you see, if one follow delusion, it harms to yourself, it harms others. It harms others means numberless sentient beings. Means numberless sentient beings, you know. Others don't want to, but numberless sentient beings. You see, I mean, the one thing is that it doesn't. If you follow self-cherishing thought, for example, then it doesn't allow to. It doesn't allow to have realization bodhicitta. You see, to have a good heart. So it doesn't allow to have, you know, to generate a good heart. Totally seeking only happiness for oneself, only working for oneself. You see, like that. So whatever you do, it's only for yourself. So so anyway. So then you see, when unable to generate bodhicitta, so then they may say, then you see they unable to complete the merits of wisdom, virtue, and the you know Mahana path. You see, unable to enter Mahana path. They also unable to achieve the exalted the Mahana path, Arya path. You see, so then you see you don't have all those incredible wisdom, direct examination, and I mean, you know, all those many qualities to be able to offer extensive benefit to sentient beings. So you don't have that. It's unbelievable. So you see, anyway, so you can't do the extensive benefit to sentient beings. You can't offer deep benefits. That then the see cannot complete the path, cannot achieve full enlightenment. Cannot seize the developments and cannot complete the path, cannot achieve full enlightenment. So they were can't do perfect work towards sentient beings, bring them to enlightenment. You see. So see, so that's so then even from that side, you see so the sentient beings have to suffer for a long time. So it's that how it harms, you know. So that's one way. By following delusion, you see it and harms to oneself, harms all sentient beings. So there's direct harm, indirect harm, you see. So then if you think from life to life, then you see life to life, you see. So that's where you see harms numberless sentient beings if you think life to life. So that Then if you say, so if one practice Dharma, you want to follow Bodhicitta, good heart, and then it, happiness to yourself, happiness, total opposite, you see, happiness to oneself and happiness towards all the sentient beings, towards others. And that happiness is like that. On this, as I mentioned before, then the happiness this life, you see, this, without clinging for that, it just comes. Even when you have through good heart, you see, without even thinking of the happiness, it just comes. And then happiness, future life, liberation for some sort, full enlightenment, all that, you see. Then as well as all those 4 different levels of happiness, you're able to cause. So they say other sentiments, the number of sentiments they receive from you, so that. So how you about by practicing good heart, say, even for yourself, and day to day life, day to day life, moment to moment life, there's happiness, comfortable life. Comfortable life is a life without fear, depression, guilty, all these things, all this package, Yeah, all this doesn't happen, you see. So you don't engage because good heart, you see. So happiness to you, happiness now, and happiness like sun shining in this world, happiness in the future for yourself, like sun shining, you see, in your future lives. So that, and then also see, bring bring it bring peace in the world, and that, you see, towards the towards the other sentient beings, anybody who's around you, and say they all to bring peace to others, so that, so from there to the whole world, to others, number of sentient beings with this. So like that, you see, from Dharma, from the good heart, and that. So so there's nothing, when the death comes, there's nothing to feel. There's nothing to feel sad. Only to rejoice. Only to feel great happiness. You see. So even when the death comes, you die with great happiness, joy. No nothing to regret. Feel depressed, sadness. You see, like that. You see. So, yeah. So the person who is seeking liberation, state of omniscience, you see, then he need to attempt many methods, so many methods, you see, to collect medicine, purify developments, you see. Then the means to that, you see, then the omniscient one, see, who is very skillful, who is extremely skillful, and who has great compassion to us and things. And then they explain that even our daily life conduct, by the way, even our daily life conduct, you see, so eating, walking, sitting, sleeping, doing jobs, so the things that which we normally do. By the way, this, these activities, not only studying Dharma or doing meditation, all these things, I see, living the morality, and also for the see, see, many other say virtuous activities to do, but even these activities, what you, these small activities, what you normally do, then They see, by the way, they become see. So the omniscient one, who is extremely more skillful and has great compassion to us. So then they explain, you see, even these activities that what we now do become a method to collect unfathomable virtue. So that you see, skies of means of collecting skies of merits. So that. So you see, not only beneficial to ourselves, but beneficial to all the synthetics like that. So explain this. The Buddha explained this. As those whose level of mind is lower. So I guess maybe who do not have bodhicitta realization, so they say how particular, I guess, in lower minded, you see, how you are thinking. So everything become, whatever you do, everything become dedicated for others and things, you say, for their happiness, or cause of happiness or something like that. So this is something to immediately to practice in the so there's a lamentation, but even other times, break times, all the activities to see as much as possible to do the Bodhicitta and to try to benefit others and things, and to be beneficial to be beneficial, making beneficial to all the sentiments. Okay, so that.
So one thing just before I comment on the summary of the particular video, I just saw that I wanted to say and forgot, was that when I received the card from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it's also just to highlight Rinpoche's amazing qualities and how he cares about every single student, sentient being. As Rinpoche said right at the end, I remember our conversation at Manjushri Institute in 1977. So I was amazed because I thought, wow, Rinpoche has thousands of students, and yet he remembered this conversation. So never ever feel with Rinpoche's Bodhicitta that he forgets anyone or anything. So then back to the video, Bodhicitta mindfulness training, especially during retreat. So Rinpoche is emphasizing that at that time, of course, it's a really perfect time, or more possible time perhaps, for us to become familiar with the bodhicitta motivation. So when we're in retreat, of course, we've ideally to cut a lot of distractions. We're much more focused on our Dharma practice, depending on what the retreat is, what the topic is. But then we can also spend quite some time familiarizing with checking, really coming to know what our motivations are, and also seeing that in retreat, we've got more control over our motivations. Sometimes in daily life, life just happens at such a speed that we know, we have to set our motivation, we know perhaps how important it is because of, karma and the outcome of anything that we do, whether it's going to be a positive result or a negative result, is dependent upon the motivation. So in retreat, it's really good to strengthen our mind, to become very familiar with bodhicitta. And then even in the break times, to try and remember then when we're perhaps eating, sleeping, resting, talking, whatever it might be, depending on the retreat, that we still have in the back of our mind, this cultivating the remembrance of bodhicitta, the mindfulness. So for most of us, certainly for myself, in everyday life, following delusions is normal for we ordinary beings. And when we've been looking at our mind for some time, maybe months, years, we start to recognize the connection between our thinking or following of delusions and how it results in harming others and how it harms ourselves. Just deepening those habitual imprints, we're planting more seeds for suffering in the future. And then the ways that our delusions, how it affects our thoughts and our words and our bodily actions, what harm we do to others. So we begin to see that this way of living, which is our norm, cannot bring the result of happiness. So something has to change. So this is where the Bodhicitta mindfulness is something so precious that we've learned, from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, many lamas, but especially Lama Zopa Rinpoche places so much emphasis on really helping us to train and to look at the ways that we can bring Bodhicitta into the everyday life. So don't wait for the next retreat. Maybe, because of impermanence, we don't know whether we'll get to our next retreat or not. The time to start training actually is now. If we can even grasp for a few moments the great value of having a bodhicitta motivation, then we won't want to wait. We won't want to waste any more time. Because the purpose of our life is to bring all sentient beings away from suffering. So in order to do that, we have to train ourselves. We have to know how to overcome our own suffering. And I wonder how many of you have had this experience, which I've had many, many, many times, is that so often we want to help others. Others come to us, especially if they have a connection with us in some way, not only family, but friends and students, etc. And then they share their problems and our heart opens and we really want to help them. Sometimes the help, I know myself that maybe I offer or try to offer, maybe is not helpful at all. Perhaps even makes things worse, but my intention was good. Pardon me. And then after those kinds of experiences, I always think, wow, really have to practice Dharma, really have to learn more Dharma, not just learn it, but integrate it with my mind, integrate it with my words, with my bodily actions, and learn to be able to remember, what is helpful in different situations. Because there's so much in the field of Dharma learning, what medicine to apply to which particular situation. So I find that through these experiences of not feeling adequate or not being adequate, not being skilled, knowledgeable, able to help people in their time of need, really spurs me on to think never to give up the Dharma practice. It's only to do more. So with training for the Bodhicitta motivation, mindfulness, is to think about the daily life and the daily activities. And we're going to look at that in a little while, in a little bit more detail, how we can make our ordinary everyday activities something special, something to become a cause for enlightenment. And this is what Rinpoche was referring to, of course, in the video of how to make those activities meaningful. So very generally, at the very least, each morning when we wake up, to take a few moments to think how fortunate we are to have awoken, still having our precious human life, then to generate that thought of bodhicitta, even in the simplest way of, whatever I do, whatever I think, speak, or do today, tonight, may it be a cause for enlightenment. May it be a cause to bring ultimate benefit to all sentient beings. And then you might want to introduce some specific times during the day where you come back to your motivation, you refresh it, you remind yourself, because the more we can do this, and now we have alarms, we have all sorts of ways that we can give ourselves reminders to check in, how is my bodhicitta motivation? What am I doing? Am I doing it with the right motivation? And then before we sleep, to definitely reflect on the day. So we're watching a video of our day and how often did we act in a way that, you know, is in accordance with Bodhicitta, is in accordance with what we know of Dharma, what we know of living a way of life that will result in happiness. And then before we go to sleep, to, again, the different ways to think, but very basic ways to think, you know, may I sleep well, may I have energy, may I have clarity of mind and physical health to continue to study and practice Dharma, to continue to benefit others, and to continue to develop my Bodhicitta mindfulness. So start out simply. Maybe many of you already have a really good habit. Maybe there are some newer people. I always say, start out simply, make it something doable. Then you get encouraged and you get stronger by doing that, and then you can add on to it. Then specifically, we can start to work with particular activities, which is what we're going to look at shortly. And then the keys to happiness, abandoning self-cherishing. We all know, Rinpoche said here, you know, self-cherishing is that which blocks us actually even entering the Mahayana path, doesn't allow the realization of bodhicitta, it doesn't even allow us to generate a good heart, because a good heart is concerned about others. Our self-cherishing is dominant in I, me, and mine. It blocks us from being able to open to even hear others, leave alone think about or want to help them. So then cultivating the good heart, living life with a bodhicitta motivation to benefit others. This good heart can start out just by practicing kindness, and then extending that kindness to also developing and cultivating empathy, to actually be able to step into the shoes of others in their various ways of suffering, to feel that suffering, not just in the human realm, but all of the other realms as well. Then from the empathy comes the compassion, that wish that others not suffer, and most importantly, that they abandon the causes of suffering, which we create for ourselves, each one of us. And then from the compassion, leading to the great compassion, then to bodhicitta, to this perfect mind, to become fully qualified, to lead others in an unmistaken way, to lead them out of suffering. So maybe now we can go to the second video.
Yeah, then when you think others, and then you see, then you think others, wow, others not one, numberless, like you, numberless others. Numberless. Wow, yeah. People, just you. Oh, down next, you think numberless. Inhale, numberless in each held, numberless hunger, numberless animals suffer, numberless, numberless human suffer, asura, numberless, not just one. Lama. Oh, so yeah, then you feel. If you feel how much you feel that you bring samsara, then you feel so strong, the compassion to others, to feel so strong. When you think of suffering how others in samsara, then you feel a compassion so strong. You see? Yeah. So, yeah, the compassion. Then you want to free. You want to help them to be free from all the suffering, the numberless beings in this realm. Then you want to take the responsibility completely on yourself. Then Bodhicitta comes. Then you talk Bodhicitta to total achievement. Yeah? Yeah. So, you see, not easy. Yeah? So how important, but how it's not easy, but how important it is Most important in the life. Most important in life. Most important, it's not just one. The most important in life. What is the most important than that? For you to help others. That's all. But it is not just talking about some nice word, no. Wow, most important, Papa. Most needed. Papa, for happiness of you, happiness of all, every sentiment. So when we generate, but I tell you, when we generate, but it's Changchuki Sen, when we generate, to feel the sentiments from the ocean, from the bring regular. That includes the numberless helpings in each realm. 8 major heart suffering, the numberless. The numberless. The 6 never trailed in the world, numberless. Numberless. So include everyone, not left out even one. Can you imagine if you think well? It's a very sentiment, but you really think it's like that. Not left out even one from numberless energy realm. Wow, amazing. Wow, so precious how they told Bodhicitta. So precious. I like that. You have to know this. Then hunger goes, yeah, outer obscuration, food, I mentioned past. So numberless, so is it anything look nice, anything green, nice, water, but you're, by looking at it, big poison, pollution, poison, disappear. You see the food is nice, but because you're looking at the pollution, you see like poison, disappear. Like that. So thousands of years, even I couldn't find it, even drop water. Can you imagine? See, if you don't get food one day, how much we suffer? Even suffering not much, but mind I didn't get food. You exaggerate. You make yourself bigger. Problem. Your mind make problem bigger. You see, so much of our life problem can be there's no problem. Or there's no something very small. They make very big. You like balloon. They make very big. You see, and so like that. Much of the like that. Remember problems. Hard anything. Balloon. So anyway, what I was saying. Oh, do not forget. What is that? Oh, so yeah. So the animal, okay, animal. When you do general Bodhicitta, to do some practice for sentiment, when you general Bodhicitta, treating enlightenment. Oh, this is always sentient beings. Sentient beings like that. But never let people around you, animals around you, suffering. Yeah, people in the city that you live in, never think. People have so much problem, never think. Only in the space or sentient beings. See? Yeah. Those sentient beings, where you live in the village, so suffer. Unbelievable suffering. When you see her, you're not thinking, sentient beings somewhere, sentient beings. So when you say sentient being, includes every single human being. Nobody is left out. No white man is left, no black man is left out. Not only this world, that number is universe. Think that number is universe, not only this world. You think only this universe. Nah. So, human being, numberless universe, all not left out even one. There's no one human being left out. No. All including sentient beings. Like that. So what about language? What about nationality? Yeah. So you have to know that. So you see, yeah, you go shopping or tourist. I mean, walking or to touring or shopping or whatever. Yeah, people there you see, they're going by bus, going by taxi, rickshaw, and walking there, people in the restaurant. Yeah, in the morning when you meditate, when you do the Mahayana meditation, begin there's a motivation, Bodhicitta, after refuge. So that includes all these people that you see. Yeah. So already you have done prayer, you have done meditation for them. Yeah. Yeah. So everybody who has 1 mile or more, what about you? You did. Yeah. The people around you, people who are helping you, people who are harming you, include that. You haven't thought, but include it in the word. Sentence beings there. Not left out. Even you don't like, even normally you never do for that person, but of course the sentient beings included, yeah? 1 mile, whatever you drink, yeah? Even you're eating one spoon of food, or drink this food done for them, yeah? So in the morning with the meditation for example, so you're all done. So that includes, yes, and all the people around you, I mean your parents, your children, and yeah, I mean, yeah, your enemy, your friend, your strangers, enemy who you don't like, whom you're always angry, or who always angry, or complain, or include all that. But even though you hate them, you don't have anything, you abandon them. But it's when you participate, it's included, yeah. So you see, then all the people in the city where you're living, yeah, all day long you see people, everything, yeah, you have done practice for them, even whatever, but that you see, you'll do, it's done. That was done for them. All the people that you see, you go outside, you see people, yeah, in the city or mountain, whatever, you see anything, any animal, deer, tiger, one attack another one, eat another one, all that. You have done for everyone. You see, just giving example. You say, Mala, or even have, or whatever. So, with the Bodhicitta, after refugees in Bodhicitta, you have done. Yeah, that's, yeah. So, everyone, to every single animal. Papa, so that means every single being in the ocean, large like shark or like wild, small, I don't name, in the water, in the river, in the ocean, I don't name, small. So everywhere there's insect, in the forest, in the bushes, plants, trees, every tiny insect that a human being don't see, yeah, and the earth is included. Nobody is left out. No one insect is left out. There are how many thousand different ants? Yes, scientists said, I don't remember that. Yeah, I've written down, but I don't remember. There's a number of thousand ants, including everything. No one ant left out. No one mosquito is left out. When you generate Changjuki said Bodhicitta. You have to know that. This is something you don't think of the people, so much suffering, whatever they do. The animals suffer, eaten by it. You don't. Oh, when you say sentiment, you never think, you never recognize that these ones whom you did practice, never. And just sentiment. But only you never think sentiment. Whom you did practice. Think, then think, you can't have it, you can't do anything like that. Not even pray for them. Even how much you see them suffering. Like that. Even you can pray, you can help, but you don't do. The thought doesn't come to help. Even you have many people, wow, there's so much of what you can do, but you don't. The thought doesn't come. The thought to help doesn't come. How much do you see them suffering? Like they have to suffer. They have to suffer, like that. Or some Muslim people say, it's nature. It's nature. the cat eats mouse. I mean, the one animal eats another animal. That's nature. You can't have nothing to help nature. That means when you suffer, don't have no doctors, nobody should help you because it's natural. Yeah? Yourself. Yeah? Yeah. So this is natural. You're suffering. You're depression, all you need psychology, all you need all those things. You don't go to see doctor. The natural. Yeah, so it's the same thing. But your case never think. Only other people. Only other animals. Nature. This cat is mouse. The snakes eating the mouse of them. But however, people killing animals. The natural. They eat meat with the natural. So that. So then you let yourself, you need help. You need help so much. Please help, please. But that time you don't think nature. So funny. When it comes to you, you're doing nature. That time you think nature, then you get angry. But that time you don't. Only others. So funny. So anyway. So Bodhicitta, then every single human being can understand every single animals, insects, tiniest. It includes everything. Nobody is left out. No mosquito, no one insect, tiniest insect. No one is left out. So important. To the total achievement for them, to benefit with. Wow, how that is best! How that is best! During every single action, body, spirit, mind for them. Wow, how that is best! And you see, there is nothing lively, best, happiest. You have to know what is the happiest life. Not just drink alcohol, drugs, like this. destroying yourself. Oh, no, that. So oh, climb the Mount Everest. Avalanche can have anything. You get lost. Anyway, so Bodhicitta, Lama Zopa, so all the suffering, obscure suffering. So good. So good. So you have to recognize like this. So many people. So you're doing practice. If you're doing mantra, you're doing your family. Yes. And you're doing your enemy. If you harm you, then, if you don't know, but you're doing it. You don't recognize it. So numberless sentiments. All the sentiments. Not left after even one. Can you imagine? You have to recognize. That. So you couldn't Kathmandu. So you recognize. You did Amaripemo, you did, all this with the Bodhicitta for these people. You did, you did, you're doing now. You see? You have to recognize. So that is good. So you enjoy. So you don't see your life as meaningless. You don't see your life as totally useless. You don't do that. So you how your life is meaningful.
So I'm wondering how Rinpoche's very vibrant, active, expressive teaching there may have touched you. Certainly it's touched me and reminded me of many things. So to reflect firstly how Rinpoche is placing great emphasis on all sentient beings. And wherever we are, whoever we're with, at all times, we're surrounded by sentient beings. How often are we really aware of that? I know for myself in daily life, it's usually so much going on in the immediate kind of environment or situation. I completely forget the vast expanse of and numberless sentient beings. And it also struck me some time ago, I was reading, which I've done for many years, the Four Immeasurable Thoughts. And then reading how all, we say again, all and all, this three-letter word all has such a vast and profound meaning. It's hard for my ordinary mind to capture what it really means by all. Of course, we know intellectually what it means, but to really have the heart so open and so expanded to remember and to think that whatever we're doing is for all sentient beings, especially from a Dharma perspective. And again, I catch myself, over the years of saying prayers again and again, many of us have these daily commitments in the mornings and the evenings, and, we do our very best to keep them and we say them, and sometimes have to confess, I feel like the parrot just going through and saying the words, but my heart is somewhere else, or it's not, it's certainly not being touched by what I read. So, I'm becoming more aware of that. And maybe as age is advancing and death is becoming more obviously clear to me, then I'm starting to think, well, we really need to start thinking more about this more deeply. So when we're saying our prayers, how present are we? How much are we really taking those words from the paper or the screen, whatever it might be, deep down into our hearts? Are those words really resonating with us? Are they really touching us in the way that makes our life more meaningful? I I think I know for myself that so many people I've met over the years in talking, because I was doing some counseling some years ago, like almost like in a past life now, many years ago, that one of the greatest sufferings for people is not knowing the purpose of the life. What is the meaning of my life? Why am I here? You know, I would hear this again and again. You know, what's it all about? So if we're just thinking of oneself, of course, this is a very difficult question to answer. But when we meet the Dharma, and especially when we meet Lama Thupten, or if we could have met Lama Thupten Yeshe, and we meet Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other great gurus, we come to know that actually there's an incredible purpose to our life. It makes our life richer than we could ever have imagined. And the key to this is the Bodhicitta mindfulness, is actually remembering that whatever we do, when we say those prayers, whatever we do in our ordinary activities, it is for other sentient beings. And so one memory that came to me as I was listening to the video again, and of course I've listened to it a few times before this presentation, but today I remembered that in the 80s, I had received a letter from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And Rinpoche was in Nepal, and at the time I was living here in Western Australia on a small property of land. And I had a really beautiful cottage garden. And so I had a young family. And so this cottage garden was in flowers, in flowering, in blooming, I should say blooming, losing my English. And then there were so many bees. And it was incredible because when I opened this letter, read from Rinpoche, I'd written to tell him about the birth of my daughter. And then Rinpoche said many things. And at the end, he said, "Oh, P.S., I may come to see you in the form of a bee." And I sat and I thought, oh my gosh, because I would just walk past these bees. I realized I was not connecting with them at all. But Rinpoche's extremely skillful message. And he said, well, I might come in the form of a bee. I began to look at those bees totally different, thinking, oh my gosh, which one could be my guru? And then thinking about how each one of them has been incredibly kind. So Rinpoche, out of the blue, has some amazing ways of teaching and leading each one of us exactly as we need. So then, in guiding to reflect us on the numberless and preciousness of sentient beings, not leaving out even one. So this, Rinpoche places great emphasis, as many of you who know Rinpoche will appreciate, especially on ants. Ants have been quite the theme for a while. Maybe it's moving on to something else now, but I remember hearing a stage where Rinpoche would just always talk about the ants, and especially when Rinpoche came to Australia, because we have countless ants. And so things could be delayed quite some, because Rinpoche would see an ant and he would have to liberate it or free it from a potentially dangerous situation. Then, of course, there's insects and there's mosquitoes. Most of us, wherever we live, have at some point in time mosquitoes. I think actually in Mongolia, I've got to say, one of the great advantages of living there is there are a lot less insects. There are mosquitoes in the summertime, but insects, well, I guess in the wintertime, they're all frozen or they're all hiding somewhere. We rarely see them. And I remember my first winter sitting doing my prayers, and on my little table I walked this little creature. I was like so surprised and mesmerized with it because I hadn't seen anything small moving in the freezing cold weather. So anyway, wherever we are surrounded, whether we see or not see them, by these countless beings. And then sometimes we don't want to think. We don't want to feel actually suffering. We don't want to feel our own suffering. That's why we go to all lengths to try and avoid, to distract ourselves with other things so we don't have to feel. And then especially when we're in the Lam Rim, we're focusing on the suffering of the various realms. Sometimes we can't wait for that meditation to be over and done with. You know, it's like kind of unbearable, or we simply don't want to feel it. We're not comfortable with pain. However, part of our training and the way of really cultivating the empathy and the compassion leading to bodhicitta is to be brave, is to open ourselves, to allow ourselves to feel the pain, to think very carefully, and not only think, but to feel how the various creatures or beings are suffering, And as Rinpoche so skillfully goes through in the video, the different realms, or at least the 3 lower realms, and then to the humans. But when we start to think about each realm and the countless numbers, like the greatest being in the hell realms, and then coming up to the pretal realms, and then to the animal realms, to human in this order, then it's, I don't know if that's your mind, but it's so hard to even begin to imagine that existence. So this allowing ourselves to feel the pain, to be comfortable with the pain, it moves us then to really want to deepen our practice, to deepen not only our understanding, but our ability to bring what we understand into the daily life so that we really can make a difference. So this causes the generation of strong compassion, which in turn leads to bodhicitta. Think, I myself will take responsibility to lead all of these beings to enlightenment. So this is an integral part, of course, of cultivating bodhicitta, is that we don't think, oh, somebody else will do it, the gurus will do it, the Buddhas will do it. If the Buddhas could have liberated everybody, for sure we would all be liberated. We need to lead others. We have to show others the path. We can't do it for them. So first we have to do it for ourselves, and then along the way we help as much as we can. But of course the ultimate is to become enlightened so that we can bring that perfect benefit. We're not left wondering, oh, I wish I could have given more. I wish I'd known what to do, or what I could have given or said in that particular situation. So the way that we will know exactly is to become enlightened. And I had a couple of other things that came to my, I remembered also Rinpoche, one of the teachings, and maybe many of you heard, Rinpoche said, if we could hear the screams, the cries, the sounds from the lower realms, we wouldn't be able to sleep, not for one moment. And of course, Rinpoche shows the aspect for many, many years, I'm not so sure now, but many, many years of not sleeping. And so this really resonated with, to think Rinpoche is definitely a Buddha, to not be able to sleep, but to then say that if we could hear the sounds, we wouldn't sleep for a moment. So I think in our ordinary way, maybe we won't waste so much time. Probably most of us still at the level where we need to sleep. In fact, research is backing the fact that it's actually important to have enough sleep these days. However, I don't think that was ever in Rinpoche's book, but it's important that we endeavor to try as much as possible to not waste time in trivial matters. That's no easy task, is it? When we're caught up in our everyday lives, most of things around us, or people around us even, if they're not in Dharma, have no idea about the activities that are actually meaningful. So it's very easy for us to get pulled or distracted at certain times. I wanted also to share just another part of Rinpoche's expressions, how in the early years, when Lama Tupten Yeshe was alive, Lama Yeshe was always the one that had the very catching, skillful eye or facial expressions. And then sometime after Lama passed, many of Rinpoche's students started to notice how Rinpoche took on this aspect. And I could say it's developed more and more over the years. And it's incredible because Rinpoche's expressions are not just, to entertain us, but there's like every atom of Rinpoche's being is feeling or is expressing or trying to get Rinpoche's message to us in the most direct and most powerful way. So those expressions, in my own experience, are not ordinary. They're very skillful means and certainly catch our attention. So then the last point I had, then don't see your life as meaningless, is the opposite, full of meaning and purpose. So this is when we are thinking about all sentient beings and really cultivating training in bodhicitta mindfulness. There is nothing that is meaningless if we can apply this. I wanted also to mention that I think it was in Rinpoche's first video, when Rinpoche said you can die without regret. And if you've lived your life well, and especially if you could live your life with bodhicitta. And this reminded me of some experiences of being with people when they were dying, and their last days or hours or weeks, how I saw many different ways that people die. And then when you heard about their life story, which often they themselves wanted to share with you, or family members did if the dying person didn't want to or wasn't able to. And it was really congruent with what we learned in Dharma, that those people who were kind-hearted, those people who thought more of others than themselves, in other words, they didn't know about bodhicitta, but somehow they already had this kind of good heart, then for sure, in my experience, those people could pass much more easily. The ones who, it's like there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of regret, there was a lot of things that they themselves had said they wished they hadn't done, or family members had said that they had done, which weren't so positive, then these people experienced a much more difficult death. So of course, I don't have vast experience in the field, but in my smaller experience, I found this to be very much the case. So yeah, you have to be really careful that saying, you know, how we live is how we'll die. If we can really familiarize our mind with bodhicitta, really use this mindfulness behind our actions at all times, then we have a much better chance of a meaningful death. To be able to die actually with the thought of bodhicitta, how wonderful that would be, especially, you know, for our future lives. So now I think we can go on to the next stage. Slide. I'm not sure how we're going with time. Just checking here. Okay. So integrating bodhicitta in daily life. So some practical tips or applications now, and maybe some of you have some already very well cultivated ideas, and you know, you're very welcome to share those, especially when we come to question and answer time, if hopefully all on schedule. So firstly, if you could kindly share the simplified checklist, which is a gratitude, thanks to Venerable Dratchom, who shared it some time ago. And I thought, oh, great, I will use that, because I'm no artist, and it comes with little pictures. Found it very helpful. So if you could please share that on the screen. Thank you. All right. So it's quite small, but I hope your eyes are better than mine. I can just see it. Some are in my mind, and not all, I have to confess, unfortunately. But I wanted to mention, oh, thank you. That's lovely. I wanted to mention also that if it's of interest to you, you don't already have a list, or you would like to have a list with some pictures to remind you, then please feel free to take a screenshot as we go through. We won't go through all of the points. We will run out of time if we do that, if I do that. So I'll just pick out some of the points we can look at. Okay, so firstly, on waking up, I've already said, you know, how to at least start out with this one. And then there are different words here. The words, of course, are full of meaning, steeped in meaning. But if you find words of your own that reflect the same meaning, but are more familiar with you, more relatable for you, please feel free to do that. It's not set in stone. So firstly, may all sentient beings achieve the holy body of the Buddha. So maybe, you know, that comes along the way. If you've studied Dharma for some time, if you're at the very beginning, you might think, well, what does that mean? So basically it means to be able to have the form of the Buddha, to be able to be of ultimate benefit to all beings. But at least we can aspire to have a healthy a body and a bodhicitta mindfulness. As we wake up, instead of waking up and thinking, oh no, the alarm's gone already, and you know, here's another day, we don't want to get out of bed. If we are familiar with bodhicitta and we are familiar with the preciousness of our human life, we want to leap out of bed and get on with creating virtue and purifying negativities, which, by the way, bodhicitta is one of the most powerful ways for us to purify. And then to create merit, you know, even we help one person, we help 10 people, we help 100 people, we can keep multiplying that as Rinpoche does. So often, you know, we get to zillion, trillions and uncountable numbers. Then think of the merits we get from one person, then if we multiply it by that many times. So such a supreme thought We need merit for success in this life and in all of our lives up to enlightenment. Secondly, something that we do all of the time, and this is why it's so wonderful, this checklist and bringing bodhicitta into the daily life, is because actually it's about our ordinary actions. We don't have to now think, oh, I've got to create some new exercises, I have to create some new movements. We're already doing this, and we've been doing them for all of this life. And well, as we would say in Dharma, from beginningless time. So getting up, standing after sitting, etc. May all sentient beings rise up from the great oceans of samsaric suffering. So again, we see this all, and we see these great oceans, and we see samsaric suffering, key words which we need to connect with. And then as we rise up, think, I'm going to lift them all up and out of that suffering. Thirdly, I didn't include this one, maybe the belt. When tying your belt, if I'm thinking here, especially for Sangha, and also maybe people who wear belts, and gentlemen maybe, and maybe some women, ladies. May all sentient beings' minds be bound by the 3 higher trainings, which are moral conduct, concentration, and wisdom. So of course, these are precious trainings in our everyday life. So when we put the belt on, we can try to think like this, or thinking in some other way that may be of meaning to you, leading your mind in virtue. And then I went to number 6, which I can't see on my screen at the moment, thank you. When sitting down, which is what we do so often, stand up, sit down, lay down. And we know about the suffering of change, but also the nature of our daily lives. So when we sit down, I will lead all sentient beings to the heart of enlightenment. May this succeed. So maybe you can think of other words that capture that meaning, that are familiar for you. How many times we stand up and sit down in a day? How many opportunities to remember bodhicitta, to create a virtuous mind. It gives us so much joy when we think about this. And of course, you might think, how will I ever remember all of this? Start out small. Start out with some activities that you're really familiar with. Put up visual reminders in very strategic places, you know, in your home, in your workplace, or in your drawers, if it's not something that you can openly share. But be creative. Maybe, again, people have some really great ideas, maybe on your screen share, on your screens. I mean, there's many reminders we can place now. Lying down in bed. I will bring all sentient beings to the sorrowless state, number 7. So the sorrowless state, bring them all away from suffering. So there are different ways to think. And of course, people who have, are practicing Tantra, there are different practices here. But for everyday people, for ordinary people like myself, then we can think in this way, not just to think about being attached to darkness, but making that darkness meaningful, to go, to lay down in that preparation. And then as you go to sleep, number 8, may all sentient beings achieve the Dharmakaya. So that, again, a Sanskrit word, and this means, of course, to achieve the holy mind of the Buddha, which is the enlightened mind, the awakened mind that each one of us has the potential for, not just for special people. Offering incense. Again, Dharma practitioners, this is something that, you know, we do regularly, and maybe even people who aren't, you know, that like to offer incense in their homes. So I know I have a much more simplified way. I just think, you know, as I light the incense, you say Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Ahum, if we're offering it, but then we go on to think, may the offering of this incense be a cause for myself and all sentient beings to abide in morality at all times. So never giving harm to one another. How wonderful that would be. So then we go to cleaning. So I think this is something that we're all very familiar with. We have to do, and often begrudgingly. It's like a job that's never complete, isn't it? You know, as far as you clean up one part of your home or your workplace, and then before you know, it needs doing again. So this is really very, how to say, something I've become very familiar with in Mongolia, that before New Year, and also it's in the Chinese tradition, and our Southeast Asian participants will be very aware of this, but we have this amazing clean from the ceiling down to the floor. And if you stand long enough, you will also get scrubbed. So in my first couple of years in Mongolia, I was, oh my gosh, I've never, I clean, of course, but I've never done this kind of cleaning. So it was out with the old completely and in with the new. So then, many people say, oh, cleaning for days before Sagansa, that's the Mongolian New Year, and they'd be exhausted. And then they're cooking. So then say, well, okay, actually, this is an incredible opportunity to turn that cleaning into something virtuous, to something that will bring you to enlightenment even. So when, this here is saying, may all sentient beings not have bad conduct. May they have perfect and beautiful conduct. Or you can think, when you clean, may I clean my own mind, my own negative karmic imprints, and may I clean the negative karmic imprints and delusions from all sentient beings' minds. So there are many ways to think. And then washing, that's all very similar. When blowing the nose, especially if you have colds, flus, clearing away all sentient beings' negative karma and delusions. So even blowing our nose has a spiritual meaning when we bring bodhicitta to it. Entering a house, temple, meditation room, may all sentient beings be led into the city of sorrowless state. In other words, to full enlightenment. May I be the one that leads them as you go through the door. When you go out, think that, number 15, sorry, I'm forgetting the numbers here. I'm liberating all sentient beings from the prison of samsara, bound by karma and delusion. May this succeed. So what keeps us trapped in prison of samsara are our delusions and all of our negative karmic imprints. So often we think, prison is just about going to a physical prison, but actually we're all in prison. And this prison is these two causes of the delusions and karmic imprints. So whenever we go out, which again we do often, may I liberate. When we open any door, number 16, I'm opening the door of the transcendental wisdom, gone beyond samsara for all sentient beings. May this succeed. I think I'm opening the door of perfect wisdom beyond samsara, and I'm doing it for every single sentient being. When I close the door, I'm closing the door, and this, of course, not just a door, but a cupboard or a drawer, many things when we close them, even when we close our computer, close our iPads, phones. I'm closing the door of samsara for all sentient beings. May this succeed. Then we meet the Guru, one of the most fortunate meeting that we can have in our life, and the most necessary one from our Dharma context, the one who introduces us to the Buddha, to all of the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the one who introduces us to bodhicitta, to perfect wisdom, to every aspect of Dharma. So 18, may every sentient being meet a perfectly qualified Mahayana Guru who reveals the complete path to enlightenment. So the key words here, the perfectly qualified Mahayana Guru. And here in FPMT, we are unbelievably fortunate to have met Lama Thupten Nyeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and all of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachers, for those who have met Rinpoche's teachers, that we can have no doubt that we're in the presence of perfectly qualified Mahayana Gurus. There are many gurus out there, especially if we travel through India, we travel through Asia, even in the West now. Many self-proclaimed gurus who have an incredible charisma, who of course have qualities. But the question is, can they lead us to the perfect path, onto the perfect path and to the ultimate goal of enlightenment? So may all beings meet such gurus as we've had the great good fortune to meet. And then to the stupa. Whenever we see a stupa, which fortunately in Mongolia we see quite some, especially like in Ulaanbaatar, but also in the countryside. People build stupas, and Sometimes your eyes peel into the distance and you see there's a stupa on a hill. They're very beautiful to see. So when you see a stupa, may all sentient beings achieve the Dharmakaya. We can think, may my mind and the mind of all sentient beings become the holy mind of Dharmakaya, or the Buddha's holy mind. In other words, may I ripen my full potential to experience perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, skillful means, perfect power. Then how are we going for time? Maybe I will just move on here. Eating, cooking, go down a little bit, please, to the toilet. We're eating yoga. There are many different ways to practice eating yoga. There's some ideas. If you're taking screenshots, you can go through. Some of you are very familiar with, I'm sure, cutting, chopping anything. If you're a cook, especially using knives, scissors, and to always imagine that you're cutting with the wisdom, realizing emptiness, and Jushi's sword, cutting the root of samsara, not the carrots, not the vegetables or the meat, whatever it might be, but the root of samsara. And this is the ignorance holding on to the I as being existing from its own side. This is what we need to cut to liberate ourselves and all sentient beings from samsara. The toilet, which for sure we all do maybe several times a day. So I'm not going to go through the whole practice here, but this is a perfect practice, not only for eliminating the physical, but really for doing some Vajrasattva mantras, and imagining that Vajrasattva is there above your crown, and then all of your defilements, your negative karmas, your spirit harms, your obscurations, sicknesses, cancers, whatever you might be suffering from, physically, mentally, emotionally, all coming out from below, going down into the mouth of the Lord of Death, said 9 stories below the earth. And then at the end of your toilet, then to think that the Lord of Death is completely satisfied with your offering, and his mouth closes, and we imagine sealed with a double golden Vajra. So even going to the toilet becomes a cause for enlightenment. How amazing is that? With bodhicitta. So I think that's as much time as I can devote to this going through. But you can see here from this wonderful list with the pictures that Venerable Jatram put together, that there's so many opportunities for us to become mindfully aware with the bodhicitta motivation, that our ordinary activities, our ordinary life can become a spiritual life, a life definitely on the path to enlightenment. It will culminate in the fully awakened mind. So what looks ordinary on the outside, if we're a practitioner, of course, this is an internal business. This is not something that we put on the outside, oh, I am practicing bodhicitta. This is inside our mind, inside our heart. So people, we can appear to be very ordinary, and others also appear very ordinary, but we don't know what is their motivation. They may have, a very well-developed bodhicitta motivation. How wonderful. But our business, of course, is to make sure that our mind, our heart is inseparable from bodhicitta over time, because it's not going to happen immediately, but through training, through practice, definitely the more familiar we become, the easier it becomes. So I think now, I've already mentioned placing some visual reminders in your home, in your workplace, and we've reviewed the activities. So thank you. We'll go to the next screen, which I seem to be right on time with. Well, okay, just wanted to share a couple of quotes. Of course, there are many, many wonderful quotes by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and especially by Ulaanbaatar Rinpoche, and I remember by Rinpa Rinpoche, many about bodhicitta. So Ulaanbaatar Rinpoche, one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings, says, if you are going, remember bodhicitta. If you are sitting, remember bodhicitta. Assuming we're all sitting now, let's just do that for a moment. Remember bodhicitta. Where are we? What are we doing? What's our motivation? And then moving on. If you are lying, oops, no, sorry, the previous screen, I haven't finished. Sorry. If you are lying down, remember bodhicitta. So when we go to bed tonight, or if you have an afternoon nap, whatever you might do, when you lie down, remember bodhicitta. If you are standing, remember bodhicitta. There is no activity that we engage in where we cannot remember bodhicitta. It will always be applicable. It will always be highly beneficial, most beneficial. And then to the next slide, please. So from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and many of you will be, Dharma students will be very familiar with this. It's in posters and bookmarks, it's in many of our publications. Live with compassion. Work with compassion. Die with compassion. Meditate with compassion. Enjoy with compassion. When problems come, experience them with compassion. Practicing this gives you the best happy life. It fulfills all your wishes and all living beings' wishes for happiness. Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So now maybe to the next slide, which I think by my, yes, is question and answer. If anybody has any question or answer, but I also want to add here, if anybody has anything about the practice of bodhicitta, how they're integrating into their life, other tips, things that they've found useful, I would love to hear, and I'm sure others would also love to hear. Thank you.
You can either unmute yourselves or you can write your question in the chat box. Perhaps I can start, Venerable Gyalmo. One of the things that you were saying that you do in Mongolia is offering service at the Mongolian High Security prison for the Liberation Prison Project. That sounds very interesting, not something that we practice in our part of the world very much in the other countries in the East and Southeast Asian region. So perhaps you can share some of your experiences and whether you've also managed to share bodhicitta mindfulness with the prisoners.
Thank you, Selena. Yes, actually, the work with the prison in Mongolia was started, I think, when Venerable Gyatso was there, which was in 2000 to about 2004, and Venerable Chantal came after, and she was there until 2008, another 4 years. So I didn't start it myself. It was well and truly established. And then I was really pleased, actually, when I went to Mongolia, and that this was part of my work scope, because I had been working in medium security prison in Bunbury, Western Australia, for some time. So high security prison, in fact, we've done service at other prisons in Mongolia, but now we've chosen to work solely with this prison because in the medium and lower security prisons, the men often go out to work. So the prisons are often quite a distance to travel. It's, an all-day affair. So we found that by going to the high security prison where the inmates are not allowed to leave the premises for their period of usually 30 to 35 years, this is the longest term sentence for the heaviest crimes in Mongolia, then we actually have a captive audience. Of course, they can't go anywhere. So I've gone through interesting times now, for 13 years. When I first started teaching there in the high security prison, in fact, all of the prisons, it was much more open to Dharma. And then the government along the way has put some restrictions and said, because I think different religious groups were coming in and there were some difficulties within the inmates themselves, some competition between those who chose to become Christian, those who wanted to stay with their tradition of Buddhism, So then they made it quite strict. Now things are beginning to lighten again. So basically, I teach Dharma when I can, and invariably we focus on the secular program, but the inmates nearly always ask questions about Dharma, especially about karma, about different aspects of Buddhism in Mongolia. And so, of course, one answers. And then meditation. We do a lot of work with meditation. So we don't actually get to talk a lot about bodhicitta as such, but we do talk about potential, and we do talk about setting motivation, how this is really important. And often talking about how, in fact, what Rinpoche always says, you people think you're in prison, but we're all in prison. It's just that we're not in a physical prison, but we're all in this mental prison of our delusions and karma. And then the way of teaching there is only 4 people are allowed in the room at any one time. So you have a very small group. And really to encourage communication, to actually teach a little, but then to encourage them to talk about what they're hearing, how they're hearing it. And then often in the course of that, they will start to open up about their own experiences, their own regret, their own journey, and what they can do actually to make their prison life more meaningful, which is something that I really like to emphasize, because can you imagine for 30, 35 years, you're in this cell, you have 1 hour a day, 24 hours, in 24 hours, to have exercise, which is basically a kind of a cage set on the end of a hallway. It's not even touching the ground. So you never get to the ground. You live in this concrete jungle. So to really how to make this life meaningful, in prison. So of course, with bodhicitta, yes, I try to remember this, but to talk about this terminology is not so easy, but I think in the coming months, it will be. I don't know I hope that answers what you were asking, Selena. When Hulal and I, my translator and I, we go home after a day in the prison, and it's a tough day, it's a full day, but we get to drive out into the countryside. It's actually in a very beautiful location, tucked away from, anywhere else. But it's like you get home and you think, you've really done a day's work that it feels like is so beneficial. In fact, the students there sometimes are more attentive than they are in the center, may I say. They don't have mobile phones. They can't be looking at screens. They're not distracted. In fact, the best meditations I have often are in the prison. It's so quiet. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. As you say, it's a very captive audience.
Indeed.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Actually, I have a question. I mean, if nobody has a question for me, I have a question. Does anybody have any experience in life with bodhicitta? Tips or ways that they remember to incorporate bodhicitta in their daily life? There's something that hasn't been mentioned you would like to share? I'd love to hear. I know you were practicing bodhicitta and you wouldn't be here, I'm sure. Many of you anyway. But don't be shy.
Hi, Venerable. It's not an answer, but it's a question actually. Can I ask you? I have recently adopted a dog. All right, a dog, Volvo dog. All right, and it's full of flea and ticks. How am I going to deal with it? In terms of bodhicitta.
What is covered with fleas and ticks? I couldn't catch the first part.
The dog is covered with.
Your dog.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I have a problem with that. How to deal with it? Every time I use the medicated soap, some of the fleas will die. So it's a chicken and egg situation. So how do I deal with this type of situations?
Oh, very big, challenging, very challenging one, and it's one that many of us face, isn't it? Especially when we have pets. So, of course, ideally we don't ever encourage killing. If there's any means and methods, and probably already it sounds like you're trying, with the medicated soap. If there anything that you can do that is compassionate to repel the insects from the dog. I don't know. Are you in Malaysia or Singapore?
Yes, I'm in Malaysia.
I mean, I wonder if anybody, if there are any, sometimes there are herbal plants, there are herbal tinctures that can be helpful. I don't know what's available there, but I would really try to make an exhaustive search to find a compassionate, and something to repel rather than kill. If beings get killed, in the treatment, then before the treatment, of course, generate bodhicitta, say many, many Om Mani Padme Hums, also Medicine Buddha mantra, and then, blow all over the dog, all over all of the insects, make very strong prayers that any being who was harmed in the course of the treatment will be liberated, will never have to be reborn in the lower realms again. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It is very hard.
Normally what I do is that every day I will use my hand to pick up all the ticks and flea, and then I will circumambulate a bit on my small stupa, and then I just release them in the jungle. That's what I can do. But at the meantime, whenever take a bath, I a bit worry about the small ticks which I cannot see. Something that I just feel sad about it. Nothing much I can do about it.
Yes. Well, even when we walk, whatever we do, actually, we're harming sentient beings. But the main thing is the intention, not having the intention to harm. And it's very wonderful that you are taking that time to circumambulate, with the insects. Are you able to take your dog around the stupa there, or go to a center where there are stupas, holy objects, take the dog? And that means you're taking all the beings, the seen ones and the unseen ones around the stupa. This is also good.
I managed to get a small stupa from ABC from Singapore. Yeah, it's wonderful, full of mantras and billions of them.
Yes.
I have to thank ABC for that. It's wonderful. Yeah.
When you collect the insects from the dog, do you put them into a container? How do you collect them? In a container of some sort?
I put inside a plastic bottle, and then I will circulate. Yeah.
Okay.
And
you could also put the stupa on the top of the plastic bottle, hold it there for a time, and imagine all the pure light rays coming from the stupa, the Buddha's holy mind, completely purifying those beings.
Is it okay to put on the altar?
The insect?
Near the prayer wheel, just put on the table there. Is it okay like that?
Why not? with a bodhicitta motivation, yes, of course. You can, yes. Do whatever you can to give them as many Dharma imprints before you take them to the jungle, to the forest. That would be best.
Thanks, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
If there is more time, and there are no other questions, maybe I can share a bit of a leading question, something related to what the question is now. A couple of years ago, I moved into a new house, and in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and having moved into this new house, I planted this very special carpet grass in my house. And that grass being foreign to that location, what started happening was a lot of the worms in the ground started eating the grass. And the landscape artist then came in, landscape contractor came and said, listen, we have to kill all these worms, because they're eating, otherwise your grass will be left with nothing. You would probably have a bad grass. So, and I said, look, I can't kill all these worms. There are thousands of worms down there. And I was in a dilemma what to do. And he says, it's up to you. You don't want to do that, and all your grass is going to die. And I remember one day having a chat with one of my Dharma friends, Hui, from KL. And I told Hui, I'm having this problem. What do I do? And maybe a lot of people know Hui. So Hui said, listen, why do you do this? She said, whenever you do your mantras, your sadhanas, have a pail of water with you. And whatever prayers you do, just visualize all the prayers are going into that water. And when you finish your sadhanas and your prayers, take this water to your garden, to your grass, and you just sprinkle it on the water, on the grass. And as you sprinkle, you make the intention that may all sentient beings, live in happiness. The Bodhicitta prayer, and all the worms live in harmony with the environment, so they don't eat this grass. And I did that. I think I did that for about 2 weeks, and my grass started greening again. The worms stopped eating the grass. I mean, I just can't, but it didn't happen to me. I won't be able to tell you this. And so now, whenever I have a situation, like sometimes you have ants in the kitchen, come from nowhere, right? They come from nowhere. So I took that trick that Hui taught me, and I just get a glass of water, and I say, a lot of Om Mani Padme Hums on the water, and I sprinkle on the ants, you know, and say, look, you know, be in harmony. I don't want to kill you guys, you know, but if you continue, I will have no choice, and I'll create negative karma. You will die, and everything else. And invariably, the ants go away. So I don't know what that. I mean, of course, Bodhicitta, the power of prayer, power of Om Mani Padme Hums, everything works. So maybe for that, you know, for the ticks on the dog, maybe we could try that and see whether it works. You know, it worked for me.
Thanks, Jaya. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ganden. I mean, it could work. Just try it. I mean, you never know.
Thank you, Jaya. Actually, it's true with water, with mantras, with prayers, with sounds, sacred sounds. It definitely changes the composition of water. So we should have no doubt. I mean, there's even scientific, I think it was a Japanese
Yes.
scientist there. Probably many people know this book. So thank you very much, Jaya, for sharing that. It's very precious advice. Thank you. Okay, so maybe, you know, Selena told me at the very beginning that you had some extra announcements today. So shall I finish with the dedication now, Selena? Will that be timely for you?
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Oh, I forgot about the recommended resources, which again, people can feel free to take a screenshot of if you're quick. There are some lovely Bodhicitta mindfulness digital cards, which are available from our foundation store, FPMT website. There are also a number of books. I've just listed the ones here by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, but of course there are other lamas as well. But the most recent one that I've read myself was The Nectar of Bodhicitta, Motivations for the Awakening Mind. Wow, so inspiring. I actually was using it in our last annual Mani retreat last year. So I really recommend all of them. Cultivating mindfulness, Bodhicitta, and daily activities. Again, many ordinary activities, but with not an ordinary mind or motivation, that of Bodhicitta. So, and the simplified checklist, yes. So video clips on FPMT website, there are many. If you Google, you use your search, then you can find many teachings by Lama Zopa Rinpoche on the topic of Bodhicitta. So thank you. I'll dedicate now. So let's take a moment to think that because we generated the Bodhicitta motivation at the beginning of this presentation, that each one of us has had the opportunity to implant or imprint many positive imprints because of the power of Bodhicitta. And we want now to protect, to dedicate those positive imprints to ripen in ways that will only be of benefit to ourselves and others, most especially others. May the merits of reading and studying the Dharma be dedicated to the good health, long life, and fulfillment of all the holy wishes of our gurus, and to the happiness of all sentient beings and their actualization of the path without delay. This prayer of dedication and persons making this dedication are empty, without inherent existence. Long life prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You who uphold the Subdura's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and especially to Selena and Jeremy, all of those people who behind the scenes have been helping me with my lack of technology with PowerPoint presentation. So thank you for the smooth ride. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Gyalmo. Beautiful, inspiring, and also happy anniversary. 45th anniversary of taking refuge. I mean, it's like this incredible jigsaw puzzle, you know, that has fallen into place. Wow, I had no idea.
I thought you might have known.
So anyway, with this, we have come to the end of the English series of Exploring and Living in the Path. But don't leave yet. I've got some important and exciting announcements. The Chinese series, don't forget, has not finished yet. So for those of you who are bilingual, or if you have friends who are Chinese speaking, please come to our last 2 sessions. It will be over the next 2 Sundays. So Maida will be leading the session on mind training next Sunday, 24th of July. And then Venerable Yeshe Khandro will be finishing the Chinese series with her session on Bodhicitta mindfulness on the 31st of July. That session will be in Cantonese with Mandarin translation. So secondly, the fantastic news on Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teaching for us on the 7th of August, Sunday. I had announced this at the last class as well. So this teaching will, of course, be open to absolutely everybody. And we will be using the various platforms we've been using up to now, which is primarily Zoom and Facebook. And I know that some of the centers have also been sharing our Facebook live stream on their own YouTube channels. But the one difference that we'll be doing is that this will be a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting format, because that is more suitable for that sort of forum with Rinpoche's teaching. It also means that there are a limited number of panelist positions available. So priority will be given to the participants of Exploring and Living in the Path. So just now I put on the chat box the registration link for the teaching. So if you can just click on that link and either save it or even register immediately, because after this class, I will not be publicizing it yet until the next Chinese class next week. So this is to give our Chinese course participants a chance to register before we open it to everybody. So priority is basically for our course participants, and then followed by the members of the FPMT centers in our region, and then followed by anyone who is residing in our region in that order, so that we all have a chance to be on the panel and to turn on our camera so that Rinpoche can see us, during his teaching. It's on a first come, first served basis. Then lastly, but not least, since this is our final English class, it's actually my last chance to thank everyone, right? Because after this in Chinese, I will be of no use announcing it in English, or rather in my very, very broken Chinese. So this has been a wonderful first regional project for all of us. And I really want to thank, first of all, the fantastic team that has been put together to bring this to fruition. Obviously, it's not just me, it's so many other people. So for the English class leaders, we had Venerable Drachom, Guido Schwartz, Nahoko Watanabe, Jaya Balan, and yourself, Venerable Gyalmo. And for the Chinese class leaders, we have Venerable Dechen, Go Pik Pin, Kim Ho, and also to come, as I was announcing, Maida Cheng and Venerable Yeshe Khandro. Then the technical team, without whom I would have been utterly useless for sure. And my all-round backup, we had Venerable Osel, Venerable Choying, Faye, Amala, Guacheng. Thank you to all of you. Would not have been possible. Absolutely impossible without all of you. And then of course, to thank all of the participants. I think over the last sessions, I've come to recognize many of your names. So thank you for turning up fortnight after fortnight on a Sunday morning for some of us. Really hope that you have enjoyed it and found it to be beneficial. I really also hope that the series has brought us closer together as a region so that we have a new level of understanding and appreciation for each other in our region, leading to better harmony and really feeling like we are part of this wonderful mandala, you know, in the care of our precious Guru, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is the inspiration for this course. May Rinpoche have wonderful health and a super, extremely, incredibly long life. So thank you, everyone. And don't forget to register, and I'll see you Chinese for the next 2 sessions. Otherwise, at Rinpoche's teaching, hopefully.
Thank you, Selena.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Selena. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable Gyalmo. Thank you, Selena, and everyone else.
Thank you.
Have a good Sunday. And don't forget, you can always contact us. The last slide, I was always sharing the videos of our Facebook, our YouTube, and our email. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Selena.
Okay.